Have you ever heard of a book so ambitious, so grand, that it took the entire creative power of an empire just to make it? Well, today we're going to dive into the story of one of the most extraordinary manuscripts ever created, a masterpiece from the 16th century Mughal Empire.
And just look at this. What you're seeing right here is a single, absolutely breathtaking page from that very book. This is a scene from the Razmnama, which means the Book of War. And trust me, its story is every bit as compelling as the art itself.
So, what exactly is the Razmnama? Well, the name is Persian, Razm means war, and Nama means tale or book. Simple enough, right? But it's the Persian translation of one of the world's longest and most important epic poems, the incredible Hindu text, the Mahabharata. Now, this was not just some simple translation project. Oh no. This was the grand vision of one of history's most fascinating rulers, the Mughal emperor, Akbar. And he was trying to do something truly revolutionary. Okay, so let's set the scene. The year is 1574. We're in Akbar's new capital, Fatehpur Sikri, and it's right here that he sets up this special imperial department called the Maktab Khana. You can think of it as an entire royal institution, a translation powerhouse, dedicated only to translating major texts. But here's the thing, this wasn't just about collecting books for a library. Akbar's motivation was deeply political and, you could say, deeply cultural. He genuinely wanted to understand the beliefs, the stories, and the philosophies of his millions of Hindu subjects. His goal was to bridge that huge gap between his own Persian-speaking court and the rest of the people he ruled. This timeline gives us a great little roadmap of how it all went down. So, after setting up the Maktab Khana in 1574, things really kick into gear in 1582. That's when Akbar officially orders the Mahabharata translation. The first amazing manuscript is finished just a couple of years later. But he wasn't done. A second, even more magnificent version comes out right at the end of the century. So let's focus on that first epic manuscript for a minute. Honestly, the sheer scale of what they pulled off here is just, it's hard to wrap your head around. 100,000. Just let that number sink in. That's how many Sanskrit couplets, or shlokas, scholars had to painstakingly translate into the formal, courtly Persian language. What an absolutely epic undertaking for an epic text. So this first edition was a monumental team effort. This was the official imperial copy meant for Akbar's own personal library. And to make this incredibly complex story easier to follow, it was filled with illustrations from the true masters of the Mughal workshop. We're talking legendary artists like Dashwant, Basawan, and Lal. And what's really incredible is that that very copy still exists today. You can find it in a museum in Jaipur. But you know, this story doesn't stop there. Over a decade later, the whole project gets a reboot, resulting in an even more detailed, even more elaborate version of the Razmnama. So, you might be wondering, how are the two versions different? Well, if the first manuscript was the foundational copy for the emperor himself, the second one, finished around 1599, was just next level. It was way more ornate, with 169 stunning paintings from a new generation of artists. And its purpose changed a bit too. Copies of this new, super fancy edition were made as prestigious gifts for other members of the royal family. And that really brings us to the true legacy of the Razmnama. Because it goes so far beyond just the translated words on the page, it gets into the very soul of Mughal art. Let's just look at this beautiful page one last time. The art style itself is this amazing fusion, right? The painters took the super fine detail and formal structure you see in Persian miniatures, and they blended it with the bright colors, the dynamic energy, and the powerful storytelling of traditional Indian art. You can see it right there. The scenes are both so elegant and just bursting with life. The art itself became the bridge between these two cultures. So in the end, the Razmnama was never just a book. It was a statement. It was a massive project of cultural synthesis, a real effort to build a shared understanding between people. And, of course, it was a towering artistic achievement that helped define a golden age of Indian art. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question, one that still rings true today. What happens when a leader invests in art, not just because it's beautiful, but because they're trying to foster real understanding? The Razmnama, well, it's one of the most powerful answers you'll ever find.